There's a common belief among some Christians that we live as a soul trapped in a sinful body and a sinful world and an imperfection and all of that kind of stuff, and that one day we will die, or some believe in that someday we'll be just pulled out and floated away and into a higher plane, while the world, this imperfect world, just crumbles into abyss or great fire or something like that. Believe it or not, that belief does not come from early Christianity. It actually comes before Christianity. It comes from a Greek philosopher known as Plato. Not Plato, but Plato. He actually was the one that taught that we are trapped in this thing and we go on to a higher plane. The early Christians actually did not believe that we were going to float off into whatever, or that we were somehow living inside a trapped existence. What they believed was in resurrection. They used what happened to Jesus as their example. When Jesus was resurrected, he truly came back in a life and form and on the earth. And they believed that was what was going to happen in Jesus' second coming. They believed that we would resurrect, that we would maybe be given new bodies, and the world, the earth as we know it, would transform into something similar to what it is now, but better. They believed in not a escapism, a float-away escapism, but they believed in a rebuilding, a reconciliation of the earth. And that's why the early churches taught so much about being the ambassadors of that message by helping people around them, by loving people around them. You see, that's what they said was the perfection part. That's where it was going to be resurrected. This world would, as we know it, would be transformed in the end days. Christ would come back and people would be resurrected, and they would live together and continue to have lives of fulfillment. We would continue to see trees and dogs and all of that kind of stuff, maybe even cats, I don't know. But it would be a better place than what we have now. The early Christians worked very hard to emulate that in their world today by making things a better place, by teaching people to read, by opening schools, by administering medical care to people, by feeding the poor, by welcoming people inside from other communities, other cultures, you name it. It was about invitation and celebrating this new creation. People like the Apostle Paul, they felt like that in the past we lived in a life that we were slaves to sin, and that the end goal was the second coming of Christ, where the world would be transformed. But in the middle there was the resurrection of Christ, when Christ started the movement of all of this. And he felt like we were kind of living in the mix of that right now, where we were no longer slaves to sin. It was still a sinful world around us. And that reformed world starts with our hearts of who we are by accepting Christ and by emulating Christ. And by, it wasn't about, oh, I hate this world and this world stinks and you stink and I'm going to float around, I'll be fine, but it stinks to be you. It had nothing to do with that. It was about transforming the world that we're in right now. And the way that they did that is they worshiped God. They loved God. They learned how to know that God is about love, about kindness, about acceptance. They learned to love themselves as people of God, people that were justified in their faith by loving Christ and Christ loving them. And then they knew that they were to take that message to the people around them, their neighbors, everybody. They treated everybody with kindness. They helped people. They helped people regardless of what they looked like or where they came from or anything like that. It wasn't their concern. Their concern was welcoming people into the Spirit of Christ. When we say Spirit, we just mean the feel, the world of Christ, that resurrected world. It's not about escaping and leaving people here to suffer and die, because when we get in that mentality, we start to not worry about people as much because we just think we're just going to escape. And so we lose some empathy. When the resurrection feeling that the early Christian had, empathy was all they had in their mind, of helping each other, because that's what they were taught by Jesus. Are we sharing that empathy? Are we actually doing everything that we can to love God, to love ourselves, and to love our neighbor? Are we being the ambassadors of that message, or do we just think that we have an escape clause? You see, there's a big difference of just pretending that you're just going to float away, and a difference between this is the place that is going to be reformed. Let's get started. Let's be that ambassador and let people know that the world around them can actually be a loving place, a place with a loving God, a place where Christ calls them to love God, to love themselves, and to love their neighbor.